What's going on, everyone? I'm back. So, what's new? Nari's in the house. It's always great. Um, what's up, Ray? Um, okay, so how many of you saw my new video I just put out, my Pearl Jam video? And I'm not going to discuss Justin Timberlake because I didn't see it last night. I watched the second half of the game, but that was it. The game was great, actually. The second half was really good. So some of you have seen the some of you have seen the video. I'm gonna do a couple more videos, then I'm gonna go back to my regular videos, and I'll do one a week or something. But how did I get to be such a grunge fan? Mark asks. Hey, Aunt Penny. Because grunge music, like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, is very much like 70s, like 70s rock, or even late 60s rock that I grew up with. It's really, most of it comes right out of the blues. All the bands are very blues oriented. They have blues melodies. They have a lot of blues elements, chord progressions, very much like Led Zeppelin. All the guys in grunge were basically born around the same time that I was. Kurt Cobain was born in 1967. Chris Cornell was born in 1963. I think Eddie Vedder 1964. Double K, Jeremy's not a little cliche. Baloney. Sorry. Anyways, now if you said Even Flow was kind of ripped off from Hendrix' Voodoo Child, you'd be right about that. A lot of the rhythmic things in there are really out of kind of Jimi Hendrix and you know, you have these great drummers in all these grunge bands too. Well, on Pearl Jam, you have Dave Cruzen that played on the first record, and then Dave Abruzzi that played on the second record and third record, and then I believe was kind of mistakenly replaced until they got Matt Cameron, who was the drummer of Soundgarden and Temple of the Dog, who's a great drummer. So those bands are very much out of the late 60s, early 70s kind of. That's where they get their influences from. Like I said, I'm the same age as those guys, and that music spoke to me, which is why I really like it. And it's incredibly good. I mean, it's really super melodic. All those big bands have incredibly good melodies. So that's why. Let's see, Ray, 90s music was actually good, but got a bad rep because metalheads thought it killed 80s metal. Well, most of the 80s metal was really horrendous. Some was good, some was great, but a lot of it was terrible, especially a lot of it at the very end of the 80s into the early 90s. When you started getting copy of a copy of a copy, it started to lose its uniqueness. So, but there's a couple different transitions in the late '80s, bands that were departure that kind of opened the way for bands like Nirvana, and the bands would be Jane's Addiction, Guns N' Roses, bands like that were not of the '80s metal. Black Crowes is another one. They were not metal bands, but they were kind of the foreshadowing of what was coming next. It's interesting. So the Black Crowes, the first record was produced by George Draculius, and it was made here. The band, the Black Crowes, you probably know, are from Atlanta, and their first record was engineered by Brendan O'Brien. Now, Brendan, you guys probably know of from he produced a lot of the big 80s or 90s bands. He produced every Pearl Jam record except for the first one that Jeremy and a lot of the hits are on. So on the first record, the story goes, so Brendan was the head engineer at Southern Tracks here in town. He came up through the ranks, he became the head engineer of the nicest studio in town. So when the Black Crowes, when they decided to make the record here, they came in and checked out Southern Tracks, and they decided to make the record there. So Brendan is a phenomenal guitar player. Brendan is so good that when I asked the head engineer at Blackbird Studios in Nashville, which is pretty much the biggest studio in Nashville, who the best session guitar player that ever came through there. And now you're talking about Brent Mason, all these phenomenal guitar players, Dan Huff. I said, who is the best guitar player, session guy that's come through? And he said, Brendan O'Brien. Okay, that's how good of a player Brendan is. Brendan's not just a great player as a guitarist, but he's an excellent keyboardist and plays incredibly good parts. If you listen to any Pearl Jam record that he did and listen to the organ, any of the like on Better Man, for example, there's an organ, a really great organ part that's on there, a B3 part that Brendan plays. Any of the organ on any keyboard parts, Brendan plays them. Also, if you listen to Drops of Jupiter, in addition to having one of the greatest string arrangements done by Paul Buckmaster, the string orchestra part is incredibly good on there. And there's also a great B3 part and a great pump organ part, and Brendan played all those. I know because I've heard the tracks. Because when I was working, the one time I worked at Southern Tracks, the singer for Train came in, and they were, and the assistant engineer at Southern Tracks was redoing their mini disc that they would use to play backing tracks with. So they had all the string parts, the Drops of Jupiter, all this stuff. So he had all the Pro Tools sessions there, and they had to ask permission since I had the studio booked for a month. Pat Monahan. Complete jerk. Anyway, so he hung out for a day and was one of the most unfriendly people you'll ever meet. So I let them in as a favor to do this, and he was still unfriendly. So anyways, so Carl, who was the assistant engineer at the studio, said that, or let me come up and listen, and he soloed the tracks, and the organ and pump organ parts that Brendan played are phenomenal. The keyboard, the piano part was played by Chuck Leavell, who plays with the Rolling Stones. They did a lot of that track, Drops of Jupiter, live in the studio. I don't know John Keane. Anyway, so, when you hear how Brendan's parts fit together, they're incredibly good, his keyboard playing. He's not like Gary Husband. Gary Husband is a virtuoso on the keyboard and on the drums. So Brendan may be like him on the, it's a different kind of thing. Brendan's not a virtuoso fusion player like Gary Husband is, okay? Brendan is a virtuoso rock player, part player, I guess, if you would call it that. Brendan's a great rock guitar player. So, anyways, so So the Black Crowes, a lot of the grunge style of a lot of the bands, if you think of the second Pearl Jam record, all the STP records, which Brendan produced, engineered, and mixed. He produced and engineered and mixed all the Pearl Jam records except for the first. He mixed Super Unknown, which is the Soundgarden's biggest record, obviously. So a lot of the classic records of the grunge era, Brendan was involved with. So anyways, that's a I'm not sure why I went off into that, and I was talking about that. So the transition. So Black Crowes, 89, 90. This is when people were starting to tire. I think a lot of the radio stations were starting to tire of the hair metal thing, hair metal sound, and the push for something new. Or kids were, what's up, Brett? Kids were really looking for a new type of music at the time. And I was not a kid. I was in my late 20s at the time. But I remember when kids would come in, when I was teaching at Ithaca College, when kids would come in and play me stuff, they'd play me Bleach by Nirvana. They would play me, Louder Than Love, Soundgarden. They play all the what was considered indie rock at the time, that was really grunge, that was gonna unseat the 80s metal movement very soon after. So it was an interesting time, and I have some good friends that were in the 80s metal movement, but a lot of the 80s metal guys hate grunge. Yet grunge is incredibly sophisticated. They really hated Kurt Cobain, but Kurt Cobain was his writing is much more sophisticated than most of the 80s hair metal. It's not that his solos were or playing was. It was his melodies. It was the chord progressions and his sense of melody over these kind of chord progressions. So it had nothing to do with chops or anything, But in a way, it also put a stop. It didn't just put a stop to 80s hair metal, but it put a stop to people, to a lot of the guitar virtuosos that were making a living then. Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, people like that. It affected anything with virtuosity. Yet, grunge always had guitar solos in it. It did. Every Nirvana song has a guitar solo. Smells Like Teen Spirit has one. He plays the melody. Just about every Pearl Jam song has a guitar solo in it, except Jeremy actually doesn't. But, Alive, Even Flow, all these songs have guitar solos. Soundgarden, Kim Thale plays guitar solos in a lot of the songs. So it wasn't a departure as much as people think. But the songwriting in grunge, for the most part, to me was superior in a lot of ways in its complexity. Even though hair metal guys wouldn't agree with me because they're incredibly biased and they're not actually. The melody that Eddie Vedder does in Jeremy is extremely complex for a rock song. It's a Mixolydian melody, as I said, and it has all these great intervallic moves in it. And he sings over the changes like a jazz player would play, which is really fascinating to me. So when I heard it, I immediately knew. When I heard, Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana, I knew that the melody writing was superior in it. A lot of non-chord tones, a lot of upper extensions. things like that. So, anyways, that's kind of yeah, Renzo. The second, third generation hair metal bands were really bad. That was the problem. It was a copy of a copy of a copy. The same thing happened in new metal, as I've said, which really killed rock music. Um, you know, they you started getting a copy of a copy of a copy with all these faceless bands that that people really didn't um, connect with, because all the rap and hip hop artists became the new personalities. They were the rock stars, and that happened after grunge. It wasn't like the grunge people uh, was better. And new metal, a lot of new metal is worse than hair metal. I agree with that. Are there songs with advanced stuff going on, non-chord tones, that I don't connect with? Oh, plenty. Plenty of songs I don't connect with. Not all new metal bands sounded the same. I mean, Linkin Park was a great new metal band. And then you had your bands that kind of spanned it. That bands like Avenged Sevenfold that were really cool bands that kind of got back to guitar playing. Where Rage Against the Machine and Audio Slave that were different. Sunny Day Real Estate is a huge band that I loved. And they're a '90s band, but in the 2000s there were bands that happened kind of outside of the new metal thing, like Mastodon, who's from here. That happened outside. I mean, Avenged Sevenfold happened outside of new metal, and was not connected in that way because they didn't have the same kind of songs, and it was more playing based. Helmet was new metal before new metal. Helmet had a really interesting sophistication to it. The guitarist Paige Hamilton, who had a master's degree in jazz guitar, I believe, from NYU, I think, something like that. Rage Against the Machine, once again, was a System of a Down is another band that was outside the mainstream of new metal, but yet was around the time. And Meshuggah, again, a band that kind of spanned the 90s and the 2000s. Tool, another band like that. It's interesting, today's video was actually going to be Judith by A Perfect Circle. I was all set to do that. Then I decided at the last minute, since I did Nirvana, I had to do Pearl Jam next. So yeah, there were bands that did. Pantera did well during grunge. Obviously Metallica did incredibly well during grunge. But Stefan, we had hair metal, grunge, new metal. Now what do we have? We don't have anything. Well, we have no, we have the gent bands and things like that. Bullet for My Valentine. They're another band that was different. I got to write with the singer Matt Tuck just before their first record. I wrote with him a couple times, and he was a great guy, the singer for Bullet for My Valentine. And once again, they had influences, Iron Maiden, bands like that, so they were kind of out of the mainstream as well. They were a successful band that wasn't part of that new metal movement. Anyways, so... And Radiohead did their thing during grunge, but so there were plenty of things. But Radiohead, did the first record in '93, but really by 94, 95, that was pretty much the ending of grunge. That was it. So Radiohead really kind of saw their star rise with the Bends and then OK Computer, and then Kid A. So they were a band that was able to cross a divide. I should do a show on this about bands that never survived Y2K, right? There were bands like Live, that was a huge band in the 90s, that never made it over the 2000 mark. Um, Radiohead made it over the 2000 mark, but I'm over past the year 2000, and bands like the Foo Fighters did, but Rage didn't make it past 2000. You know, it became Audio Slave. Um, so Thaddeus, My Bloody Valentine. I was a huge fan of My Bloody Valentine, huge fan. But they were, you know, obviously the Loveless record is a 80s record. Flaming Lips did too. But really, I think the Flaming Lips, their you know, pinnacle was in the mid '90s. They did make it over um, the 2000 mark, but um, anyways, 1999. It's anyways. How many people are new on here? Just out of curiosity. South Bulletin was their great record. That was a really great record for Flaming Lips. Pinnacle was Beavis and Butthead. Nine Inch Nails was definitely out of the was kind of out of the. They were a mainstream band, but they weren't. They weren't a grunge band, and they weren't a new metal band. You know. James' first live stream. Beavis and Butthead did kill Winger. Is there any new metal records to look forward to? I don't know about new metal, but I listened to the first single of the new Perfect Circle song today. There's a new Perfect Circle song out, and I listened to it today, and it was pretty good. I thought it started out good, but I've only listened to it one time, so. So I'm talking about. There's a comment here. Do you mean bands which ceased to exist in the '90s or lost relevance? I think I mean lost relevance. I think that there were bands that lost relevance in the that lost relevance after the year 2000. Green Day. Well, obviously Green Day was a band that was big in the '90s. Dookie is '94, but their kind of pinnacle record. Although I think that was kind of their pinnacle record, but American Idiot has got to be what, in 2005 or something was their huge record. Red Hot Chili Peppers. Did they survive Y2K? That's an interesting. I mean, I think that they did. I think that they did their best work before then, for sure. They did survive Y2K, but I would say that they did their. I think that they did their best work before them. Thought of Dave Matthews Band. It's interesting. I think that Dave Matthews Band is has. I don't know. They seem to have disappeared. Or else their audience is just getting old right now. But it seems like they were kind of at their pinnacle in the '90s, even though they did, you know, I mean, really, honestly, when they did their record with The Space Between Us, that record came out in 2001 or so. I think that yeah, you know, I think that that wasn't their best record. I think that there was, I think their best music was in the '90s still, and so it's interesting. It's like bands can survive, survived past the year 2000, but I don't know if their relevance increased past 2000. People argue with me. I argue that the Foo Fighters' best music was in the '90s. I do. I think that, I think The Color and the Shape is their, you know, I think it's Dave Grohl's best songwriting. Um, but just like I think that the best songwriting with the Chili Peppers was on Blood Sugar Sex Magic. I think that was I think that that was their best playing, best songwriting, best sounding record. Um, so, and I think, on a sales wise, um, if you think about singles that happened on the Foo Fighters, their biggest singles are all on the second record. Monkey Wrench, um, Everlong. What was the ballad that was huge? They had four huge hits on that record. Um, so anyway, so that's oh, another one of my favorite records, absolutely favorite records of the '90s is the second record of Counting Crows, Recovering the Satellites. Recovering the Satellites is one of my favorite records. Period. It's got amazingly great songs on it. The interesting thing about it, it was produced and engineered by back to back. Gil Norton produced and engineered and mixed Color and the Shape by Foo Fighters, and then he did Recovering the Satellites by Counting Crows. And they're incredibly good sounding records. Long December's on there, but there's a song called Catapult that's the first song on there. Daylight Fading is an incredible song. Um, uh, um, there's just so many great songs on there. Really great songs. Some of my favorite songs. Um, so this is a record after Mr. Jones. That was on the first record, but this record is really really strong. The Counting Crows record. I don't like anything else they've done, honestly. So after that, I think that they have some of the best singing and the playing, the guitar work on that second record is just amazing. All the drumming, everything is great on it. So so that's kind of my take on that. It's really that this really fascinates me. You guys can tell that I've thought a lot about this, about these topics, because these are the kind of things that I sit around and talk about with my friends. Because none of my friends are jazz musicians or classical musicians, really. So I was forced to only talk about rock music with them. Um, Matchbox 20 didn't really make it over the 2,000 mark. Not very well. Um, what are we talking about? Well, we were kind of talking about. Daniel just asked, "What are we talking about?" I was kind of talking about. I was talking about bands that didn't make it over. There was almost like this imaginary line in the year 2000 that of a lot of bands that were big in the '90s just could not, just died after 2000. And I'm not sure what happened. I mean, I can think about some things that that there was a lot of bands that took up, if you look at what was big on the charts at the time, if you took a band like Live, okay, that was huge in the early 90s, all the way through grunge, that was not a grunge band at all. Train had their big drops of Jupiter in 1999, but bands like Creed were massively big. You know, selling 100,000 records a week. All three Creed records sold over 10 million copies. Linkin Park, both of their first two records, I think the first record was at least 12 million. The second record has got to be, you know, they must have sold 25 million worldwide on the first two records alone. Britney Spears happened. 1999 was the biggest year. 2000 was the biggest year for bands. They had three records that came out. Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, and NSYNC all had huge records that were made Zamba $1 billion in profit in 1 year. Somebody said, what about the Breeders? I love the Breeders. They were a great band. Once again, they never made it out of the 90s. Obviously, hip-hop was happening too, and people's... I don't think, though, people made the move to hip-hop until... and Rhett says the internet happened, but I don't think it's totally that. The internet did happen, but I think that... that the nu metal movement actually had a lot of the same problems that the end of the hair metal movement had, with these kind of faceless bands that really never went anywhere. And I think that's kind of when hip hop took over. Although, hip hop, the Atlanta hip hop scene was really happening around 2000, 2001, 2002 with the whole crunk movement that happened. Little John, David Banner, Yin Yang Twins, Bone Crusher, Outkast, even though they weren't really a crunk band, but Outkast was a band here that Andre 3000 lives a couple miles from me. A lot of the production work that came in the hip hop world happened here in Atlanta right around the year 2000. I love crunk too. Bone Crusher. I don't know what happened to Bone. I was friends with Bone Crusher and worked with him on a bunch of projects, actually. I used to talk to him all the time. He's a great guy. He actually was on the Fozzy record that I produced. I had him come over and do a rap with Jericho. Well, he rapped. Jericho didn't, but I would hire, when people wanted a rapper on a tune, I'd always call Bone up and I'd say, hey man, you want to come over and rap on a tune? And he always like, what's up, my man Rick? And he'd come over, and he was great. He was the greatest guy, and he was a great, super fast lyricist. And when we would do crunk had a very specific way, because one of my really good friends mixed a lot of the big crunk records. And crunk, which is a type of Atlanta rap that happened, had very specific ways that the vocals were doubled. You had your hype track. It's the way that things were panned were very specific. Anyways, so Polvo. I remember that band. Interesting. Ministry didn't make it past Y2K. Last time I saw Bone Crusher was as a judge of some Food Network show. Been a few years. Yeah, he was doing that. He almost had a career in doing that, but he didn't. That's tough. Little John has done really well. Last time I saw him, he was on the after show of Walking Dead on Talking Dead a few months ago. But he lives out in one of the super rich suburbs here in Atlanta. Which grunge track, Nicholas asks, has the best bass line? I'll tell you, I know which one has the best bass line. Fell on Black Days is the grunge track that has the best bass line. That's definitely one of them. I'll do that song. So, as a matter of fact, I got an email from a producer named Michael Beinhorn today. I got a message on Facebook, and he produced Super Unknown, Soundgarden, and he is going to be a guest on Sounding Off. So that is going to be great because we can ask him about Black Hole Sun, Spoon Man, Born on the 4th of July. That's one of the greatest sounding grunge record, one of the best sounding rock records, period, is Super Unknown. And Michael Beinhorn also produced Grave Dancers Union by Soul Asylum. He produced Social Distortion's record that had I Was Wrong on it. I forget the name. It was a killer record. He produced Celebrity Skin by Hole. He produced Rocket with Herbie Hancock. I think that was his first big hit. Day I Tried to Live is another track on Super Unknown. Ray, you like Social Distortion? I love Social Distortion. Not Ball and Chain. Was it Ball and Chain? No. What was I Was Wrong on? Anyways, so I'm going to interview Kickstand. There's another great song in that. So I'm going to interview Michael Beinhorn on Sounding Off, and we'll get some great Chris Cornell stories. And Wood is a great bass line, Nicholas. I have... Okay, so here's another thing I want to talk about. Okay, does anybody ever read the comments? We talked about this the other night. Does anyone read the comments of that are on my videos, especially these last 5 videos I've done? It drives me insane that people ask me every other comment is what plugin are you using to solo the tracks? And it boggles my mind. How do people not know this? It may be the best part of the show. How do people not know this? That Tom, yes, seriously, Jari, have you guys seen this? Literally every other comment, either can I get the parts? What plugin is creating the part? How are you able to solo these parts? Kid Charlemagne. Why not just tell us? I mean, some guy accused me of actually tracking parts and pretending like it was me being Larry Carlton or something. No, I can't block him. It's every single person. Where do you get the stems from? Where do you get this from? Where did you get the tracks from? Oh, are you guys asking me that? Oh, so I have hundreds and hundreds of songs that I got from people years ago. I told a guy today about this. I was talking to a guy who asked me that. I remember one time, it was back in 2003 or so, I was doing a session at the studio. Those tracks are fake, I can tell. I was doing a session out in Double K, a stem is a stereo mix down of a particular track. You get a stem of drums, you might get a stem of keyboard parts where a couple keyboard tracks are blended together. So, anyway, so I'm down in El Paso doing this session. Um, and um, so this guy I was talking to, and we were talking about Andy Wallace. And he's like, man, I would love to get. Andy Wallace is a huge mixer, mixed Nirvana, Nevermind, mixed the first couple Rage Against the Machine records. He mixed so many incredible sounding records, and he's like, man, I'd love to get his samples. And I said, oh, I've got his samples, his kick and snare sample. And he said, what? Wait, was I at Sonic Ranch? I think that's where I was. I think that's actually where I was. So, anyways, this guy says to me, this engineer that was there says, you have Andy Wallace's kick and snare? And I said, yeah. And I told him how I got them. I got them by mistake. And I can't tell you the story how I got them by mistake. A guy accidentally put them on one of my hard drives as he was doing a mix of a demo that I did. Okay? So, anyways, and I realized it 6 months later. This guy had told me that he used Linkin Park's samples on here. And I said to my assistant, Ken, I literally had him for 6 months here. And I said, wait a minute. He said that he used Linkin Park's kick and snare on here. I wonder if that's Andy Wallace's ones, because he mixed the first two Linkin Park records. So I went in the other room. I pull out the hard drive, open up the track, and I find that I have Andy Wallace's kick and snare sample. Okay? So, don't tell anyone. So, this guy says he told me he'd give me $5,000 for the kick and snare sample, for real. He literally said, I'll give you $5,000 for that kick and snare sample. This is how much I mean, these guys didn't give, Andy Wallace would never give this stuff. He would never even admit he put samples on anything. So, anyways, I didn't give him those samples, but I had other samples that he wanted, and he traded me. He had all of Nevermind, all the tracks to Nevermind. He had he had tons of different tracks that a friend of his worked at a studio that did transfers of all these records, because all the labels were doing transfers around the 2000, 2001, 2002. They transfer the multi-tracks over. If there were stems that were included in the session, because a lot of mixers would mix stems in case you had to adjust a mix, they didn't want to go back and have to recall all the effects. That's why some of them have reverb on them and stuff. So some things I have all the tracks to. Some of them I have the mix stems that have all the effects on them. That you put them together, you put them at 0, and it plays the mix. Everything's gone through so I traded for all the Nevermind, not the stems. I traded for the Nevermind tracks. So anyways, and then over the years, people would just give me stuff, anything that tons of stuff, and I never really thought about doing anything with it. But literally every other comment. Hold on, I'm going to read you some comments. Would rather have the tracks and stems every day. Strat Cat. I mean, no, you'd rather have either one, because a lot of times the stems are just individual tracks. A lot of times, like for example, the stem, you'll have a stem that's a stereo guitar thing, but the guitars were hard left and right, so you split them out and you have the hard left and right tracks. So most of these stems are, there'll be two different parts in a stem, but this is two separate parts, right? Maurizio, you'll take whatever. There you go. Okay, so hold on. Let me read you some of these. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I'm just going to go to the first. These are the comments that just came in. I'll take the Bruno Mars thing, for example. Um, Noah, you repent for asking where I got the tracks. Okay. Let's see. Here's the Bruno Mars. Let's see. Wow, this is cool. What program do you use to isolate different sections of a track? Next thing. Very nice video. These are back to back comments. These are right back to back. I know it's probably been asked, but how do you get each track separately? Next one. Next one. Where did you get the isolated samples tracks? Let's see. Next comment. Great video and interesting to hear the isolated tracks. Although the intro is actually, let's see. Oh, wait. Oh, would you mind sharing where you got the tracks? Have been a big fan of your channel. Two comments later. How did you get those separate tracks? Next thing. Did you have a copy of the multi-tracks or did you just isolate each part? What? What? How would you not isolate each part? They fell off a truck. Right, Jay. Next one. Where did you get the tracks? This is literally, you'd think that the people would, do people leave comments and not look at anything, the comment after it or that happened right before it or the couple comments? Any idea how he got his hands on these stems? I'm dumbfounded. Next one. Please make more videos in pop production. Okay, wait. Let's see here. I mean, this just goes on and on. It just question after question. Anyways, so there you go. In all fairness, that's actually not true because the comments go on for days. This that's from the Bruno Mars from 4 days ago, 5 days ago. If they just look at the video and they look in the comments, they'll see. Hey, I wonder if there's a post if he's giving a thing where the tracks are. If somebody did that and I was looking at it, I just scroll down to see if there's a link anywhere, right? I mean, that's leave the tracks, take the cannolis. All right, exactly. So that's my. But people are thinking that that I have some plugin that makes the tracks separate. So there you go. Never mind. I didn't say every time. Just say Melodyne and move on. I should do that. Track and field, Jari. I used a pair of scissors. Why don't I think of stuff like that? I used a pair of scissors. Oh my God, that is great. Isotope track isolation plugin. I mean, oh man. Okay. Stems and seeds. Oh boy. I should really do that, right? Razor blade on 2-inch. The unmixing console. iTunes separator. Where were you guys? What, the stem cell research. Blinker fluid. I don't know what that is. Anyways, that's okay. So there we go. I mean, honestly, it's multi-extractor. um, have I watched May It Last, A Portrait of the Avett Brothers? I've not seen that, no. Um, I just turned the knob all the way left or right. Well, yeah, that's actually true. That's you can totally do that. Um, isolate the click on the next video. Food processor, Beato isolator. Oh, that's what I need to do. I need to sell it too, right? I explain it in the Beato book. Oh man, I don't know. If you're interested in how I got the solo tracks for this, I'll say at the end of the video. Check it out. It's in the Beato book. Um, man, that is great. So solo extruder. Ray just said, obviously these commenters have no mixing knowledge. That's exactly right. But here's the thing: it's like, why would somebody comment or watch a video like that that is not interested in um, in mixing? That's what I don't understand. Like, why watch a video like that and not have any idea, or why would you watch a video of someone deconstructing a track and not have any idea of how about multi-tracking? So, and I don't, Double K, I've got no problem with people trying to learn, but it's not, it can't be every single comment out of the, hundreds and hundreds of comments that are on there, thousands, I don't know how many, well, hundreds, 500 comments. So it's same reason you want to explain why the song is great. Yeah, people say to me, that's the other thing. You never explained why the song was great. On Kid Charlemagne. So two people were in this thing, and I made some wisecrack to them, and I just blocked the dudes. They're gonna complain. Like, I'm transcribing the parts. I take the time to transcribe the bass part. Learn and teach the guitar solo. Transcribe the keyboard part and everything. Why am I transcribing this stuff? These are the parts that I think are great. That's why I took the time to do that. So that's what I can't really fathom, is that they don't understand that's why I'm pointing these things out. I'm pointing them out because I think they're great parts. Do I have to say so? On the new video, I did my thing at the beginning where I said, this is why I think these are great. Anyways, nice guy's version of anger. There you go. But it's really, after a while, it gets irritating. But I just never. I mean, I honestly will look through the comments to see if anybody's got a question that I can answer. Oh yeah, the comments about how Copeland's drums weren't delayed, Tom. Yes, exactly. Ridiculous. People have been doing that forever in rock music, and I got this guy telling me it's a reggae technique that Stuart Copeland is not very good at. It's like, what? Somebody actually said that it's not a delay on the hi-hat, it's a reggae technique. You heard me say this the other night. I mean, it's the dumbest thing that I could ever, I couldn't think up something like that. One time I had this guy, who's a friend of mine from high school. This is probably 20 years after I graduated. Called me up out of the blue. It was probably 1999 or something. That's more, yeah. And I was home visiting during Christmas. My folks were there, and this guy calls me up and he says he wants to come over with his wife and play me some of his songs. He's a guy that I knew in high school that was a guitar player. So he comes over, and my parents had never met him. He grew up a couple miles away, and I won't say his name, but he came in and brought his guitar, and he was always a terrible singer. I mean, absolutely terrible. And he said he wanted to play some songs for me. He knew I was producing, and and he sat there and he played a few songs, and he sat in the kitchen, played them for my mom and dad and me. And they eventually leave, and my mom turns to me and she says, "You know, some people have no talent." And my mom was the nicest person in the world, but she was so right, like delusional. She said that was embarrassing. That he was so bad. She said some people just have no talent, and it was, and there's nothing else to say. That my mom said it all right there. It's like I said, yeah, that was atrocious. Oh boy, I mean, we were sitting through that, and we were just use your delusion. We were sitting there and waiting for him to be done. Please be done. Anyways, so my mom was like that too. She knew as soon as he opened up his mouth and started singing, she just was, oh brother, terrible, terrible. Can't sing, can't play, and can't write a song. So you got 3 strikes against you. But my mom was also the person when I was saying that that there were people that I said, you know, Mom, a lot of people can't figure out songs by ear. And she said, what? And I said, you know how you go and you sit down and you want to learn a song? My mom never played an instrument really, but I mean, she played guitar. You know, I taught you. She could play chords, play Hey Joe and stuff, but she never really took lessons or anything. She wasn't like Aunt Penny or Aunt Marion that were actually, you know, have music degrees and were professional musicians. But my mom could go and sit down and figure out any song by ear. No problem. If she's, you know, she'd listen to something, oh, that's a D minor here, it's a G, it's an A7. Just, you know, like, and she said, people can't do that? I said, oh, you can't believe it, Mom. There's tons of people. I got students that can't figure out anything. They couldn't figure out the chords to, you know, one of these Italian songs that my mom could call the chords out for the first time she's hearing it, you know. My mom did not have perfect pitch, no, but she had a great ear, you know. It's just like Aunt Penny. When I was talking to Aunt Penny last week, I was video chatting with her, and we were talking about harmonizing a song, and she just hears it. She can hear it a bunch of different ways, you know, and that's it. It's, you know, Aunt Penny, why did you never play the music? Because it was boring. She reads the arrangement. She said, because the arrangement is boring. And when you play it, and then she would play what the music is. And it's like, okay, it is boring. And so she said, so I would always do my own thing on it and reharmonize it. So the Dunning-Kruger effect, there you go. Any plans to teach the kids to sing in harmony? Oh, kids can already sing in harmony. No problem. Easy. I can, all the kids can sing in harmony. Already. Don't have to do anything. Just give them a note. They can sing it. Idea. A video when you split tracks via method, compare results, mid-side, phase cancellation, Melodyne. What do I think of the 20 Pearl Jam remixes? I don't like them. I think that Brendan probably started out doing it. And here's the thing. I don't want to talk about this. I love Brendan. But I think that I suspect, because some of the songs sounded different, they wanted them drier, and then I think that some of the songs got wetter as he was going on, meaning with more delay, more reverbs and everything, because it sounded weird to him. Um, so, anyways, one simply does not come to the Beato. Double K says, one YouTube comments on Rick's video is something like, one simply does not come to the Beato household without asking Dylan to sing A flat. A flat. I wonder, is that an A flat? That sounded like an A flat to me. The band was unhappy with the amount of verb. Yeah. But you know what? Move on. That's how people hear the songs. And they paid Brendan to remix them. It's like, what was the point of that? That was A flat, right? See that? I don't have perfect pitch, but I can sing any note off the top of my head. So people always thought, well, you have perfect pitch. So, anyways, so there you go. 4 cents flat, Soupy-Doo. Wise guy. 4 cents flat. Oh boy. All right, so I'm good for tonight. I've done an hour. I don't want to hurt my voice. I gotta warm back into this. Okay, you can hear that my voice is better today, but you heard it a little bit. It's broken up a couple times. I'm trying to take it easy. That's what my ENT said. He said go easy on your voice here. I still feel a little bit of congestion. You guys are great. We're gonna listen to music. I'll come on tomorrow and we're gonna listen to music, and then Wednesday we're gonna listen to your music. Is tomorrow Tuesday? Yeah. Today's Monday. I'm not making a video tomorrow. All right, I'm going to pause and then go.